Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here at the Providence College Podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. This week, we're speaking with comedian Paul Mecurio of the class of 1982, who works on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Mecurio followed an unlikely path to stand-up. He majored in accountancy and went to Georgetown Law before working on Wall Street as a lawyer and as an investment banker, brokering mergers and acquisitions for Fortune 100 companies. You can see this Emmy and Peabody Award winner perform in Mulaney Gym on Friday, October 4th during homecoming weekend. Paul, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it's great to be on. I love PC. I had a great time. It's a very different campus than when I was there. It was like Slavin Center, and the two buildings were like the Slavin Center, Aquinas Hall, and the security booth that the guy sits in. Those are the three buildings. You know, if you got bored with the Slavin Center and Aquinas Hall, you went and saw the Irish Catholic security guard there. So, yeah.
There's a few more pastimes on campus now and a few more places to explore for sure.
No, it's amazing. I was there, my son was looking at it, and I just couldn't believe it. It, exploded. It's beautiful.
It almost looks like the pictures in the admission materials.
Right. Exactly.
For most people, thinking about studying accounting, working for late night would be a pretty unusual career aspiration. Tell us about what your plans were when you came to PC and how they changed.
Well, my plan was to be a Broadway dancer. I have great legs, and but that didn't work out. No, I'm just kidding. I planned to do business. I grew up in a family furniture business in Providence. I was comfortable with the idea of business, and I pretty good at math, and I liked accounting. It was very logical to me, and then I thought, well, the idea of being a lawyer is interesting to me. So I thought, okay, I'll combine the two and go to law school and do corporate business law. And there was I was always funny, but with my friends, but not I'm going to go be a comedian. You know what I mean? And it's funny because I always joke. People would say to me to this day, they're like, "Did you know you were going to be a comedian?" And I'm like, "No." And they were like, "Were you funny?" And I say, "Well, I was always the funniest lawyer in my law firm," which it's not saying much. It's like being the sexiest IT guy, And so I basically, went to law school, went to Georgetown, then went to New York and started doing corporate M&A deals, and that's what I thought I was going to be doing. And then for some reason, I started to write jokes and make short films, comedy short films, and it was in me. I don't know why it was coming out, so I was writing, and then I had masked a 12-page document with jokes that was in a secret password file at work at the law firm because I couldn't let anybody know I was doing this. And then the way the door opened for me was I got invited to a private corporate function that one of our clients was having, and Jay Leno was a private entertainment. And I went up to him after the performance, and it's funny. I almost was not going to go. I was these M&A deals. You're just pulling a lot of all-nighters, and that it's just 24/7. They're on the clock, and I had another long night ahead of me. And I'm like, I'm not going to go. And I was like, you know what? I need a break. And then Jez, I was standing over my keyboard. I'll never forget it. And I said, what the heck? And I hit the print button, and I printed out the jokes. And then when he came off stage at this function, I went up to Leno and I said, look, I have these jokes, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but maybe you could use them on the Tonight Show. And he was like, okay. And he really does talk like they're letting helium out of a balloon very slowly. You just want to go breathe a little bit. And he took them, and I was so nervous. He goes, hey, come back here. I go, what? He goes, you might want to put your name and your phone number on here so I know how to reach it. Here I am, Mr. M&A, and I didn't even put my name and my phone. I was so nervous. And then I thought it was just being nice, throw the jokes out. And then a couple of days later, my phone rings, and I pick it up. It's like, it's Jay Leno, it's Paul Mecurio there. And I, at first, was silent, stunned, and then I'm like, okay, this must be my friend, because I told my friend David that I met him. David likes to do impressions just as a joke. And I thought it was him joking around. I said, yeah, really funny, David. He goes, no, really, it's Jay Leno. And I said, no, it's not. He goes, it is. And I went, I actually said to Jay Leno, you do a lousy Jay Leno. And he's like, I think I do a pretty good me. And then it turned out to be him, and he said he read the jokes, and he needed jokes for the Tonight Show monologue, and he would hire me to send in jokes, long distance, and if he used anything, he would pay me $50 a joke. And then I just started sending him material, and a week later, he did one of the jokes on the Tonight Show, and it blew my head off my shoulders. Like, it was $50. Here I am doing these, middle class kid from Providence, Rhode Island, doing these big merger deals, and they paled by comparison to this joke. And I think what happened was there was a creative thing in me that wasn't really getting satisfied being a lawyer, and there's nothing wrong with that, or a banker, because you're more of an advisor, and you're sort of, you're doing the process, you're making the deal happen, um, and and then did this joke. He did this joke, and people were laughing at it on TV. And so here's this box I had been watching my whole life, and other people's words were coming out of it, and people were reacting to it. And now my words were coming out, and everybody laughed. And that really struck me. And then I just started becoming obsessed with writing jokes, to the point where I was going to deal meetings with 2 notebooks, and one was for the deal and the other was for jokes, and I was taking no deal notes. I was just taking joke notes. And then I have to go back and recreate the minutes of the meeting, and I had no idea what happened. And I have to go to the other lawyers and go, so tell me, what did so-and-so? And the guy, my friends, my other coworkers would be like, weren't you in the meeting? Why are you asking me? You were in. So it just, 2 worlds started to collide a little bit, and it got kind of crazy.
Wow, so that's really phenomenal that you were leading kind of this double life, but it sounds like your heart was really in the comedy.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, so then what happened was Leno said to me, you can try the jokes out before you send them to me. And I'm like, how do you do that? And he's like, well, you just go to these open mic nights, which are like, little performance spaces in bars, usually in the back of a bar, where they have poets and comics and folk singers, and you can try the jokes out. So I figured out where to go, and then I went on stage one night, and then I got a couple of laughs, and that was like a drug right into my veins. So then I started to sneak out of work to go do open mic nights, like I was supposed to be working, and I'd get in a car at 6, 7 o'clock at night, and I'd go downtown to the Bowery, which is a really bad neighborhood in New York, where a lot of, undesirables hang out, let's put it that way, and I was going to dive bars, and one of them was called Downtown Beirut 2, and I had a number 2, I guess they were franchising them, I'm not sure, but it was, they dealt drugs out of there, a hooker worked out of there. There was actually a sign on the men's room door that said the toilet seat's only to be used to go to the bathroom, not to cut coke, thank you, the management, and it actually said thank you, the management on it, and I would go there and change up in the car so I didn't look so Wall Street, take my cufflinks off and my tie and mess up my hair and wait to do a joke and then go on stage and do my jokes and then go back to work. And it became, I was sort of a tale of 2 cities. I was in the 50th floor of, marble offices, and then I was in the dregs of like the worst bars in New York. And one night I was waiting to go on stage, and there was a folk singer on stage, and I was next, and all of a sudden there's a scuffle at a pool table, and this is at Downtown Beirut too, and one guy runs out of the bar, and another guy standing there saying, I'm going to get him. Apparently it was they got an argument over a drug deal, and one of them owed the other one money, and he took a knife out and he kind of slashed him across the arm, and the guy's bleeding from the arm, and his girlfriend's crying, oh my God, look at my boyfriend. And he's like, I'm going to get him, I know where he lives. Look at my thing. And then I think, okay, well, I'm supposed to go up next, but this show's over. And I start to walk to the door, and I hear the MC go, all right, you guys ready for some comedy? and stuff. And I go on stage, and I don't know, I'm new, and I don't know what to say, so I was like, but I knew that I had to acknowledge what was going on, because it was like complete mayhem in the bar at that point. And I said, nice to be here. I always wanted to follow a slashing. And the guy who got cut heard me say that, and he starts screaming at me. He goes, you're making fun of me? I don't need to take that. And he had these bloody napkins that he was using on the cut, and he threw them at me. And they hit me in my shirt, and I had a big blood stain on my shirt, and I had to go back to work with a blood stain on my shirt. It was insane. It just got insane. So it was slowly going from being a hobby to an obsession to a vocation, but I didn't know that at the time.
It seems crazy, though, that of all the mentors you could have to get into the business, that Jay Leno was your mentor, is the one telling you, hey, to go try out these jokes. And
yeah, I know, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen a lot of times to people, and I do think, like, you have to put yourself out there and go ask, because if you don't ask, you never know. You know, I had Paul McCartney on my podcast, and I asked him, because he was at a show I was working on, and I just went up to him and asked him after we had talked for a while, and he agreed to do my podcast, and I was a nervous wreck, because I was, you know, he had basically, was just hanging out in the hallway, and I said, you know, would you do my podcast after we talked for a bit? And he went, yeah, sure. And I didn't expect him to say yes. You know, like if you there's a girl or a guy you really like, but you feel like they're never going to say yes to a date, but you say, I'm going to ask anyway, because at least I'll know in my old age that I asked, and instead they say yes, and you don't have a plan. Well, I said, would you do my podcast? And he went, yeah, sure. And then he goes, how would we do it? And I literally sounded like this. I started to stammer. I go, I could come to London. And he's like, we're in a room in New York together. Why would you come to London? And then he goes, is it easy to do? And I actually said to Paul McCartney, oh, yeah, it's really easy. You could do it on your phone, naked from your toilet. I'm like, what am I saying? Oh, my God. And then I said, look, I'll leave you alone, and I'll go get your, you know, assistant, and we'll figure it out. And he goes, nah, he goes, you and I will do it. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you and I will exchange numbers, and when we do it, when I'm ready, you have to be ready to do it. And I'm now giving my phone number to Paul McCartney, and I thought he was just going to blow me off, and he did the performance, and I left, and my phone rang, and I was rushing, and I didn't recognize the number, and I let it ring the voicemail, and I'm going to try to play this for you. This is the message that was on my phone.
Hi, Paul. It's Paul McCartney here. I'm going to ring you back in 5 minutes to do the podcast thing. I've got some time now. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of time. So if you're there in 5 minutes' time, you got me. Okay, bye.
And that happened.
So what were you doing, like, when you call 5 minutes later? Like, when you call 5 minutes later, like, did you just, like, record it on your voice memos on your phone? What'd you do?
I was working at the Daily Show at the time, so I went there and I ran into the office, and we had this, like, private phone booth where you can make private conversations. And then I called my podcast studio, which was in L.A. at the time, and I said, I need a line. I got Paul McCartney. And the guy on the line goes, well, there's somebody in the studio right now. And I snapped, and I went, look, unless you have Jesus Christ or John Lennon in that studio, get him out. I need a line. So we had to stall Paul McCartney for 25 minutes till we got a line set up. So I had to keep calling him back and go, 5 minutes. I go, and then I finally said, can I just do it another day? He goes, no, you got me now. You got to get me now because I'm really busy. And then we got a line, and I got on the phone with him, and we did the interview, and it was incredible. You know, we talked about making music, because my podcast is one-on-one interviews with people about their process and how they do what they do. So I have found in doing this, for students listening to this, like, you do have to put yourself out there and go outside your comfort zone, and, you know, just go for it. You know, I know it's a cliche, because, you know, you never know. The worst thing that can happen is somebody says no, but at least you pursued it and you tried, you know?
I mean, if you had kept your head down and just stayed at your desk doing the M&A stuff, and never brought those jokes to Jay Leno, where would you be now? You'd still be at that desk, maybe.
Yeah, but I'd be retired with a massive house in the Caribbean, so I'd have probably since I was working.
All right. So you had a good good destination no matter what.
Yeah, but you know what? I would not have. That's, you know, money's fine, and we're very comfortable, and this all worked out financially. That really, you're right. Like, I would have been at that desk, and I would have been wondering. Every time I'd see a comedian on TV, probably I'd be like, oh, I probably should have tried that. And once I started to do it, I thought, I kind of was hesitant and felt kind of shy and ashamed to tell my Wall Street friends, because I thought they'd think it was so frivolous and to be a comedian. And there were a lot of them were like, good for you, you know. I wanted to be a writer, but, you know, I didn't have the guts to go for it, and I wish I did, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, you should go for it now when you can, and you don't have a lot of responsibilities or bills and mortgages and stuff. So I got support from unlikely sources in doing it. And so you're right. Like, I think I would have been sitting at that desk wondering and maybe wishing, you know, I had tried it. So, you know, but it was scary. Once I left Wall Street to do this, sold my apartment in New York City, and I moved to a little rooming house where I shared a kitchen and a bathroom with other people for $327 a month, a little 10 by 12 room. I started to have doubts very quickly, because you start out and you just work these really divey bars and bad shows, and nobody's paying attention, and you get paid $50 and you drive 2 hours, and it wasn't as glamorous, as it looks on TV, when somebody's on TV. And I had a lot of doubts for a while, and I went back to Wall Street for a while, actually, because I got so scared that I was giving up too much security. But I went back, and I swore off comedy, and then, boom, I started doing it again. It was almost like a, alcoholic that goes back to the bars for drinks, and I couldn't stay away. It was a tumultuous couple of years, because I had always been very clear about what I wanted to do. You talked about accounting, and, I kind of had a path, and went to Wall Street, and then all of a sudden I was, unsure of what I should do with my skill sets, and that's a scary place to be, So it wasn't like, I don't like to sugarcoat it, oh yeah, I just decided to do it, and then it worked out, and I got Emmy Awards and stuff. There was a struggle along the way,
You went through the full VH1 behind the music cycle there.
Yeah. Exactly. And then they found them in a motel room in Iowa, and they, like that. So, yeah.
So, growing up, were you a fan of the late night shows that you're?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would beg my parents to stay up late if a comedian was on, like the Tonight Show or Letterman or whatever, and then I don't know what it was. I just loved to stand up, and then would go to school the next day, and I'd tell some of the jokes that I had heard, and people were laughing, and I thought, oh, that was pretty cool. But I wasn't consciously saying to myself, oh, I'm going to go now and do stand-up. I don't know, I just liked comedy. All forms of it. I loved Jonathan Winters, Robin Williams for their improv, and, Steve Martin and Leno, and, a lot of different types of, I can appreciate all kinds of comedy. And, it just was kind of always there, but I didn't realize it was there, But I think the fact that I can write something, create something out of nothing, and then it gets a reaction from people, it's very entrepreneurial. It's no different than somebody comes up with a new brake pad for cars that it's going to be revolutionary. That person's had this concept that was just in their head, and then suddenly materializes, and then suddenly is being consumed. And that was very powerful for me.
So it's an outlet for creativity, a form of creativity, just like a scientific breakthrough would be.
Yeah, because when you're an accountant, and there's nothing wrong with that, that's what you're doing. You're accounting for things. And there's nothing wrong with it. And because I really liked accounting, it's not a creative endeavor in that sense. Yeah, if you're structuring complicated merger deals or whatever, and you then have to work with the tax code, that's where the creativity comes in. But, I'd be comfortable in a law firm or a bank and, have a nice apartment, or go hang out in dive bars with hookers and the slashing's happening. Come on, who wouldn't pick that second life? No, I'm kidding. It was crazy. It was definitely a crazy move, I'll tell you that.
Well, you're the second accountancy major to sort of make a name for themselves in the entertainment world from PC, because Peter Farrelly just won an Oscar as the director for Green Book this year, and he also was an accountancy major, so, we can add that. We just need to find somebody who's a Tony Award winner.
Get it all covered, right?
Yes.
Exactly. I'm going to go on Broadway and try to do a musical now, so I can get a Tony, and we can say PC covered it all. And it's just been crazy. My parents didn't really understand, because they're high school educated, and their son, I think parents say, "Oh, my son will be a doctor or a lawyer or an important politician or businessman." And so here I was, that dream that they probably had for me, and I come home, and I remember saying to my mother, I think I'm going to leave Wall Street to be a comedian. And she looked at me, she goes, "That better be your first joke." And I was like, and I'm like, "No, I think so." And And she didn't understand it for a while, but then what happened was I got on The Daily Show, and I was writing and performing on that show. And my mother doesn't watch a lot of TV. She's just not that kind of person. So, but she has her store in North Providence, and people would come in. And when I had pieces, articles done on me, you know, I've had some done in the Wall Street Journal or this or that, she'd put it up, you know, proud mother, in the store, and people go, and somebody saw me, like, on the set of The Daily Show, and like, who's that guy? And it's my son. He goes, does he work on The Daily Show? She goes, yeah, you know that show? Oh, man, I love that show. That's the best show I do. So she started to come to appreciate what I was doing through other people, and then she, it was like, and then, you know, when I told her I was going to leave, she still said, I don't have a son. No, I'm just joking. She didn't say that. But it was then when I went home with the Emmy Award, and I took a picture of it with her, that she started to really kind of think, oh, okay, this isn't just some frivolous little thing. But it took a while for them to, you know, get their head around it.
Walk us through a typical day on one of these shows, on what Daily Show or late night is like. I mean, how early do you get in? How do you prep and get familiar? You know, how do you stay on top of the news cycle as it changes?
Yeah, well, typically, you know, like at the Daily Show, which is kind of really where these shows emanated from, you know, because like John Oliver, Samantha Bee, Stephen, all started on the Daily Show, and the process that we created at the Daily Show was, you know, in the morning everybody would get a newspaper and look at stories. It almost run like an editorial meeting at a big newspaper. Okay, what stories are we going to cover today, right? You go around and say, Paul, what do you got from the Wall Street Journal? You know, Jim, what do you got from the New York Times? And I got this story, okay. And then somebody comes in with news footage from all over the world, because we subscribe to a big news feed, Associated Press news feed. And then we cull that down to 5 or 6 stories, and then we go off and write like a bandit for 3 hours, like you were taking up. It was just like taking a final every day, from 10 to 1. And at 1 o'clock, you had to hand the jokes in, and then the jokes get reviewed by the head writer and the host, and then put together in a script. And then that script goes to the graphics department, where, you know, like they need a picture of a president with a funny hat. They got to start making all of those, they call elements, that get added in, so that when the joke is said, that picture comes up over, you know, the host's shoulder. And then the script's rehearsed at like 3-ish, 3:30-ish. The target is to start shooting at 5:30, because we pre-tape shows for that night. And then at 3:30, that rehearsal generates more changes to the script. So there's a rewrite session while the audience is being loaded into the studio and the band is playing. There's a rewrite of the script to, you know, clean up jokes, eliminate some jokes, add some other jokes. And also all this footage that goes with the jokes has to be cut and recut. So it's a real process. It's sort of a ballet between the editors and the writing department and the graphics department to pull all the pieces together in the rewrite. And then at 5:30, after audience warm-up, which is really important because you need that audience excited. Otherwise, if they're not laughing at the jokes, no matter how good they are on paper, they come off lame to people at home, right? Because nobody's laughing in the studio. And then we tape the show. And then that show, there's maybe some minor edits, and it airs at 11:30, and then you do it again the next day. And then on top of that, there's like field pieces that you do where, you know, you see like a correspondent for the show going out and, you know, doing almost like a 60 Minutes kind of piece. That was always like the parody of 60 Minutes, you know, where they go out and investigate, quote unquote. And those were produced by a separate department. But so other parts of the show are being made as the week goes on, and we tape. Well, at least the Daily Show, we would tape Monday to Thursday, and the Late Show, Colbert's tapes Monday to Thursday, so that the Friday is a day to kind of take a beat, assess how the week went, and plan for the upcoming week. So in the case of the Late Show, there's double taping on Thursday, so they tape the Thursday and Friday show in one day, so it's a longer day of shooting, and so it's a very involved process that it's a lot of manpower, a lot of work, a lot of time, and sometimes people think, it's comedy, they just they joke around for a couple of hours. They write up a couple of jokes, and then tell them, and then they go home or go hang out at a bar and get drinks. Whatever. It's a very intense process when you're shooting a show.
And then you come back and do it the next day. It
gets exhausting, and then especially if you have a topic that doesn't go away. Like right now, it's all this Trump stuff and impeachment. Like you kind of get burned out on, kind of writing on the same topic. But if it's such, top of mind that you have to address it. Same thing with like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and her servers and email server. Like it just, you kind of some days just want to tell some silly jokes, and so we would try to sprinkle in some non-political stuff too, so it wasn't just political stuff. But yeah, it's and then the guests you have on are really cool. Like we've had presidents on and vice presidents. It's funny because we had I think it was Al Gore on the Daily Show, and when they come, especially if they're a sitting vice president or president, like the Secret Service comes like weeks in advance, and they sweep they take assessment of the neighborhood, and they sweep the whole building, and then day of, you have to only can walk in certain areas. It's really intense. Have dogs and everything, and they put up John would sit at the desk, and then there'd be the guest would sit on the other side of the desk, and there was like a little placard, maybe about 3 feet high, in front of the guest that had the Daily Show logo on it. Well, they put a bulletproof sheet of metal behind that. It was for the vice president to sit behind, that you couldn't see. It was on his side of it. And so John makes the point. He goes, they did all this stuff for you. He goes, and you have a bulletproof panel. He goes, I don't. He goes, what if somebody in this audience snaps? I'm a dead man. You're fine. Everybody went crazy. It was really funny, but it's cool. You get to see stuff. You're at Providence College. It's a great school. You never think you're going to get to meet and see these people and be part of this stuff. So it's really been like a really cool, journey. For lack of a better term.
So, what were some of your fondest memories of PC? Were you in any clubs? Like, did you do any theater or radio shows?
No, I didn't do any theater. I worked a lot. I had to work in the family business. So I don't think I had the typical college experience, which I wish I did. Like, I wish my parents would let me live on campus, even though it was close to home. And I would hang out in Stephen Center a lot. We'd play pool. I actually ran for president of my class and lost. There was a controversy. They caught me in a compromised position. No, I'm just joking. I basically I should have slung more mud at my opponent. That's what I should have done. I should have gone low. And no, I ran. I don't know why I ran. I think I was, maybe there was a bit of a performer in me then. I don't know. I remember making up posters and putting them up all over the buildings and inside and out. And another guy who was an on-campus resident from Jersey, he won, and I think it was partly because he was there all the time and could make connections and all of that. We go to a lot of hockey games and basketball games, but I did as a kid, because Providence College was like one of the best college programs for a while, and so that was sort of an extension of being a Providence kid. But the school was great, and I really liked Western Civ. There's no program like that in the country, and I'm really glad. It was hard, but I'm glad I went through it. I thought it was like 2 years of it, and I remember the thick philosophy book and everything, and but I think it's a good. I just think it's a really good course to really expand somebody's mind, And I went to Slavin Center when I was there recently, and the food looks way better than when I was there, by the way, okay? It was sort of like prison food when I was there. It was like there was a woman with a hairnet with a big mole that had a hair come out. No, I'm joking. It was a really good school, and educationally really good school, but a different environment than it is now. It's just now it's incredible.
Do you ever find yourself drawing on your civ education in the writer room at the Daily Show or now at Colbert?
Yeah, making some historical references. I also think philosophy and, sort of helped me with law school. Law school's, Socratic method of teaching and, syllogisms and all of this. So I think that there was actually a direct, kind of connection between what I learned in Western Civ and what I was able to apply. All of that analysis is really what you have to do as a joke writer. You're really taking something that seems like a surface topic or whatever, and then drilling down and analyzing it and breaking it down. And I think the education at PC was really great for that because, I was an accounting major, but I had a healthy liberal arts education, and I think that made a lot of sense because you create a well-rounded person, and so you're able to really kind of parse something when you're writing a joke, even if it's just something as silly as I was at the supermarket and I needed a bag for my groceries. I had 8 items on the belt, and I go, could I get a bag? And the guy goes, you want a bag? And he looked at me like I had 2 heads. And I think it's because they don't want to spend money on bags, and they're telling these cashiers to not give out bags. And I'm like, yeah, I need a bag. He goes, you really need a bag for that? I go, it's 8 items. He said, you need a bag? I went, it's 8 loose items. And he kept saying, you want a bag? I go, no. And then I'm like, no, you know what? Forget the bag. I'll get a live octopus. He'll carry it all home in his tentacles, right? And the guy started to laugh. But in thinking about that, it is sort of even a sort of a silly joke like that. You kind of got to drill down about well, what is that really all about? Why is that person asking for a bag? And then so you use that to make a comment on, corporate America or where our priorities are or whatever. So you're always, I am always trying to use the jokes to tell a story or to convey a point of view.
And this is something I feel like The Daily Show and other late night shows have been able to do in a different way than the traditional media. It seems like you're able to provide context in that history, like you mentioned, like you had from DWC, but how do you feel this fits into the overall kind of spectrum of media and commentary that we have today?
You mean the shows like The Daily Show and John Oliver Show and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I think what it did, a lot of people would say this to me at The Daily Show was I didn't really care about politics or news, but I liked watching your show because I learned something, but it's fun at the same time. Because all of our premises have to be rooted in reality in the news. And so I think what it did was it brought new people to the discussion and to the political environment and the zeitgeist through entertainment, through satire. Will Rogers was a satirist. Mark Twain was a satirist. So you can use comedy and make a point and be smart and objective, right? So one of the things people liked about our show was they didn't feel like they were getting a spin either way from Republicans or Democrats. We were just calling it like it is. And especially now where there's so much divisiveness and everybody's living in their own silos, I'm a Republican and I don't listen to Democrats. I'm a Democrat and I don't listen to Republicans. That's unhealthy, so we just go after everybody. And so I think it's almost like it worked out because the marketplace needed it and wanted it, and once it was offered, they consumed it, and it became a big show and a big hit, and then it spawned these other shows, it's pretty incredible. So, and I do think it's a place where you can kind of call people to the carpet still, because you're not going to get objective news from any of the cable networks because they all have an agenda to, I think, keep, feeding their viewers what they want to hear. And and people say to me, I only get my news from The Daily Show, and I'd be like, you should try to read a newspaper and watch a little bit of news too. We are a bunch of idiots just writing jokes, but all our jokes were tried to be topical and have a point of view and say something and make a comment, and not be afraid to put ourselves out there, but do it with comedy, And when I do it, I go on cable news shows as a commentator, my rule for me is make a point and be funny, or be funny and make a point, but always make a point,
Well, Paul, this was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, definitely. This is a great podcast. I really enjoyed it. Thanks. And people want to check out my podcast, The Paul Mecurio Show. I named it myself. We did a lot of research before we came up with that name. It's on all those platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, and it's one-on-one interviews with a lot of cool people, so check it out.
Remember, you can see Paul perform on Friday night of Homecoming Weekend in Mulaney Gym. Purchase tickets and register for events at homecoming.providence.edu. And
no heckling. I'm very sensitive. No heckling out there, okay?
Subscribe to the Providence College Podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Transistor, and Spotify. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.